Alright, today I wanted to take a look at doing something a little bit different with Power Automate. And basically, what we're going to show is how you can sometimes, in certain circumstances, use connect actions from the SharePoint connector with files that are in OneDrive and vice versa. And you may already know this, but OneDrive for Business is effectively SharePoint. It's your OneDrive for Business storage, and we're not talking the consumer or personal OneDrive. Strictly OneDrive for Business is essentially a SharePoint document library in a site that you are the owner of. So it's your personal SharePoint site with your personal document library. So therefore, a lot of the things you can do with SharePoint or using SharePoint actions can be done in SharePoint and OneDrive. And the reason I bring this up is that one of the things that I wanted to figure out how to do was to programmatically send start a review process or an approval process that would allow the recipient, the approvers, to open a document in review mode. So in other words, there is a built-in request sign-off flow in OneDrive rather. When you select a file and you go to the Automate menu and select Request Sign-off, you will see there is basically the first time you do this, it's creating the flow. I've already done that step, so I have this flow ready to go. But I can put in the name of the person who I want to approve this. So I'm going to have Robert Hogan approve it and say, please approve me, and click run that flow, and done. And when I look at my email, I get an email or message saying that these are all old emails. There we go. The doctor.docx was sent for approval, was sent to Robert Hogan for sign off. And if I jump over to another browser where I'm signed in as Robert Hogan, I can see here is that message. There's a link, and I can open this document, and because essentially it's I have read permission or view permission to the file. All I can do is view it, and then I can go back to my email and approve that or reject it. So I'll approve it and just say that's fine. So that's the basic gist of the request sign off flow in OneDrive. So it's simple. It works for those simple scenarios where you just want someone to say, yeah, that's good, or no, it's not. But if, let's say we were co-authoring this document, this was a policy where I needed that approver to open it up and make some edits, to add their comments, but I want to do it in a way that allows me to see and accept their changes or reject them. In other words, I want to have that document open in review mode. So when you're in OneDrive or SharePoint and you have a Word document that's only, by the way, works with Word documents, and you share it and you open up the link settings, you will see that there is an option here to open in review mode only. And when you do that, it's going to open the document up. I'm going to cancel out of this, but it's going to open the document up in this reviewing mode, which is really in effect the web-based equivalent of track changes. So if I want to change William here to Billy, it's entering that as a tracked change or a suggestion. And if I right click that and I accept it or reject, let's say I reject it, it just goes away. But I know who made that suggestion, and it doesn't actually change the content until I accept it or I throw it out. So that's really what I want to do. I want to programmatically, I want to have that type of link, that review only link, sent for any approval flow or for the similar to the request sign off. So how do I go about doing that? Well, first off, I'm going to go over to my flows, and there's that request sign off. There's the standard out of the box request sign off. But what I want to leave that as is, because I probably will use that again in the future. But I want to create a copy of that. So I'm going to click the three dots here and click Save As. And in this case, I'm just going to change this to request sign off with review mode. Okay, and I'll hit save, and you'll note that when you do that, it basically turns them off, so you have to turn that flow on. But then I'm going to open this up for editing so we can modify it. First, let's just talk about what the flow out of the box does. It, for a selected file, gets the metadata of that file using the path, because the trigger action returns the path as one of its values or one of its outputs. So it uses that path to get the metadata, and then here's the create share link OneDrive action. And if we look at the link type, we have view, edit, and direct. None of those scream review, and I've even tried entering as a custom value the word review, as one person suggested, and it does not work using the OneDrive share link, create share link option. So what I did learn after some other testing was that there's an equivalent action. So if I open up go to add an action here, and I go to SharePoint, there is a action to create a sharing link for a file or folder, and I can select that, and this asks for information that I don't have, because this isn't, your first thought is probably, but it's in OneDrive, it's not in SharePoint. Remember a few minutes ago I said that your OneDrive is really a SharePoint document library. So if you want the site URL of your SharePoint site, where your OneDrive lives, that's this. So I'm going to copy that, go over into my flow, and I need to enter a custom value and paste that in. That trailing slash sometimes causes an issue, so I'm just going to remove that. And then the library name. And this is a little bit trickier, because I'm never quite sure. I remember if it's documents or shared documents, because if you've been around SharePoint for a while, you know that default document library in every SharePoint site still has an internal name of shared documents with all the space encoding in between. But I think Microsoft did do the right thing, and in OneDrive that file, or that document library, is simply called documents. So I'm just going to enter documents, so use that as a custom value. Now the item ID, I don't have that. In other words, the ID here that is being returned by this get file metadata is not the same thing as the item ID in SharePoint. So I need to backstep a little bit here, backtrack, and basically what we need to use there, just like there's this get file metadata using path in OneDrive, we're going to add an action again from SharePoint, and we're going to look for get file properties or get file metadata. Yep. Let's get folder metadata. Get file metadata using path. Perfect. That's what we want. And you'll notice the name is exactly the same as the OneDrive action, so it throws a 2 after it. That's fine. We're not too worried about that. But again, we need to enter a path here, or enter the URL. So then that's going to be my site URL, and then file path. And I'm just going to give you the answer here, because after some trial and error I learned that the file path here, so this is returning a file path, and if I look at the get file meta, actually I want to use the the trigger action, there is a file path option there. If I use just that, it will fail. I actually need to preface it with documents / then the file path. So don't just accept that. Don't worry about the explanation. So you need documents / file path. All right, so now we're getting that file metadata using path, and we want to create that share link. So now we have, look at that, item ID from get file metadata using path 2. Perfect. And for the link type, now it does say view and edit or view only. So they haven't updated it to include or incorporate that review mode, but what I learned, thanks to a very helpful person on the Power Automate community forums, was that if you simply enter a custom value and type in the word review, who knew, that effectively creates the appropriate link that will open in review mode. Now, again, it's important to note that this will only work with Word, Microsoft Word documents. So if you try to run this flow with an Excel document or a PowerPoint document or a PDF where that review mode is not an option, I don't know what's going to happen. Worst case scenario is the flow fails. Best case scenario is that the flow the flow succeeds, but what they'll get is an edit link, because review is sort of edit with this review mode toggled on. So it would still be, they'd still be able to edit. I will probably try that out at some point in the future and let you know what happens. But for right now, I'm just going to caveat this whole thing with saying this is only known to work with Word documents. All right, and then for the link scope, we need to say anyone with the link, including anonymous or people in your organization. Now, I'm going to say people in your organization because chances are if you're sending this to one person, you might want them to be able to forward it to somebody else. I certainly don't want it to be anyone with the link. I don't want it to be anonymous. So I'm going to select people in your organization. Now, it's possible I could also select a custom value here and scope it just to the approver, but I haven't tried that. So we'll just stick with people in your organization for right now. And yeah, the only advanced option is link expiration, but that only applies to anonymous links. So that's not going to work here. All right. So now I have this creating sharing link, and I'm going to go down to my approval. And for the item link, I'm going to change that, and I'm going to use the output of the SharePoint sharing link. And the name is still going to be the same, so that's perfectly fine. So really all I have to do is just change that one link. And I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to go back over to my OneDrive, and just to be sure, I'm going to stop sharing this file. So I'm no longer sharing it with Robert Hogan or anybody else. All right, so not shared. And refreshing the page, private. Okay, so I'm going to go through the same thing. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to go to automate. And here I have my request sign off with review mode. Select that. And I need to basically say, yep, I'm good with all of these because this is the first time I'm running it. Yeah, all of that is perfectly fine. So the approvers are going to be Robert Hogan, and I'll say, please add your comments or changes and approve. And we'll run that flow and click done. And just to see, oh, it failed. Something failed. Let's check out what failed here. Get file metadata using path. Let's see exactly what happened there. Oh, it's actually putting a slash in there, so there's a double slash. So I need to edit this. So it's just documents and then file path. And we'll hit save. And I'm just going to open up this failed run and resubmit it. And we'll click OK. The upside of resubmitting is I can actually then just watch to see what happens here. Is the rest of this work? Is it going to get that metadata, create that sharing link, and it started the approval. All right, so now if I jump over to good old Robert Hogan's inbox, there is the approval. Please add your comments or changes and approve. So now, fingers crossed, when Robert opens that up, there it is in review mode, and it's even letting him know that this document has been shared with you for reviewing. You can leave comments and suggest edits for the author to approve. So you'll notice that I can switch to viewing, but I can't go straight to editing because I've only been given permission to open this file in review mode. So I'm just going to leave it there, and I'll say, let's say this is not, go down here, and let's just add another paragraph. Look for more information on tardis.com. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to then close this and say, yep, and I'll just in the comments here say, see my additions, and submit. Now going back over to my flow, I can see it finished, and there is my same notice that he signed off, see my additions, and when I go and I look in that document, hey, there is his addition, and I can even use the catch-up function here to see who made that change. And I can click on it. I can see Robert Hogan added this, even a timestamp of when it was added. And then do I want to accept this or reject it? I'll accept that. There we go. So that's it. So we've now effectively taken the request sign-off flow, out of the box flow, modified it a little bit of creativity by adding two actions from the SharePoint connector, because now we know OneDrive is SharePoint, and I won't say SharePoint's OneDrive, but OneDrive is SharePoint. So we can use these SharePoint actions with OneDrive content. It just takes a little bit of creativity. And I will say that it is a little bit irritating that there isn't more consistency between the two, that things like the item ID or the path are not consistently surfaced. So they'll use the same term, the same file identifier exists as a property for files in OneDrive and for files in SharePoint, but the value that's stored in that property is not the same. So yeah, it's a little maddening. But hopefully this is useful to you, and you can see that sometimes if the need arises, you can use actions from one connector on content or data from another connector, at least when OneDrive and SharePoint are concerned. And hey, if you actually wanted to programmatically create those review links or links for Word documents requiring review mode or allowing review mode, now you know how to do it. Now, if this were in a SharePoint document library, I would basically I wouldn't need to do anything special. It would just be the SharePoint, create a review workflow or flow, create that metadata or get the file metadata, create the sharing link, etc. But there you go. So hopefully this is useful. Let me know what you think if you have any questions or other ideas of cases where you might want to use one actions connector with information or data from another connector. And if it's possible, I will let you know.